is. Yes, hello everyone to our kind of slightly like, I don't know, casual workshop / event, which I titled How to Become a Support Worker While Studying. First of all, I want to say massive thank you to Katie, Mahveen, and Sonia, because they're in the midst of their dissertations. Normally, students don't even answer emails at that time because they're like, oh my God, it's all about the dissertation and the coursework, but it speaks to the excellence of these three students and their good heart that they took half an hour or so out of the time to tell us about how to become, or how they became, a support worker while studying. All of you are in year 3, and would like to start by chatting to Emily, because Emily sent me an email. She said, like, oh, I just finished my placement at Likewise, and I'm trying to find a job as a mental health support worker. And how do I do it? And I said, I have no idea, but I know some people who work as mental health support workers. So Emily, maybe you could start a little bit. Maybe you can tell us a minute or two about your placement. And then could you tell us also, like, what are you looking for? Why do you want to do mental health support? What are your expectations? And so why are you interested in that?
Yes, so hello everyone. So I just finished my placement here at Likewise now in April. And I worked there as a support worker. I was a placement student support worker. I did a 10-month placement there, and I worked with adults that had complex mental health problems and physical health as well. So it was going to their homes, helping them out, or also like at the Likewise hub that we could meet. And then there was also like a lot of community activities that I took part of. I even created one of my own ones. So yeah, there was a lot of responsibilities, and it really made me think that I was really interested in working with people that have mental health issues. And I've always thought about becoming in the future a clinical psychologist, and now working at Likewise, it really made me, I'm sure of it now as well. So when I finished my placement at Likewise, I started to look for other jobs, which was really difficult to find another job. So I sent my CV to like a lot of platforms, and I finally got an answer actually, and now I have a job offer at one of a private organization, which is a part-time job, which is great as well. This time I'm getting paid, because at Likewise it was unpaid. And yeah, but my questions were more, so I was having difficulties finding a job, and I wanted to know like if you have any websites or any advice to how you can easily try to get in touch with other organizations. And as well now, so I might start working there during summer, but then when I'm starting my 3rd year, I would like to work part-time as well. And just I have questions around that as well. What you would suggest, how many hours, like what days to work, because I don't really know my calendar yet for my 3rd year. So yeah, that was all my questions.
Okay, so could I think, okay, so actually I want to now turn to Sonia, because I think, Sonia, I know your CV the best because you're my personal 2D, and we just like worked on your application, so I've kind of like know all these steps. But actually I was wondering, you all 3 did a placement as well, right? So I'm just kind of wondering, like, did any one of you start to work as support worker before they started their placement, or was it for all 3 of you after the placement? I don't know. Like Katie, Mahveen, and Sonia, how was that for you?
Yeah, I worked as a support worker before I did my placement, and I'm still a support worker now. Yeah.
So maybe you can. So how did you find your? Okay, Mahveen says in the chat, mine was after. Fantastic. Sonia, maybe then we start with you. I know you. Did you have at that point when you applied, how much pre-existing experience did you have, right? And then tell us a little bit how you found the job and how you kind of. Okay, so Katie was also just before, I see in the chat. Fantastic. Yeah, can you okay, what did you do beforehand? How did you figure out where to work? And then, yeah, maybe talk us through that process.
Yeah, before my placement, I did I think the first place I volunteered was Resources for Autism, and I did that for a couple of months. And there was some other charities I did, like Shout, which was like an online platform where you would text people who were going through like emotional crisis. And then I think it was during the COVID lockdown, I just kind of wrote down on like the Google search engine support worker jobs of people with kind of like mental health challenges. And that's when like I kind of went on to like, there's different job sites like Indeed, Total Jobs and stuff. And I was just applying to like a bunch of different places. And the first place that got back to me was Certitude, which is support working with people with learning disabilities and autism. And yeah, from there it was like, because it was COVID, especially, like they were kind of desperate for people. So it was very quick. Like I got within a month I was working, like
Wow.
GPS, everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so did you feel ready?
No, when I went there, like the first month, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, where have I come? Because it was a lot. Like I've never done support working either. So, but I kind of like I got used to it. I saw, I've been working with the clients for about 3 years now, so I know them well. So now it's kind of like automatic autopilot. It's good, but
Okay.
yeah, when
So
I first started.
is that in year one, between year one, year two? When is it year two? When, like time wise, when does that fit in?
It was literally in July when I was in year one, so just towards the end of year
Oh, okay,
one.
okay, fantastic. And then did you like since then, how do you structure your time? Which is like, did you work more during the summer and then less? Like, how does that, or did you like what was like your basically your weekly hours?
Yeah, because I work as a bank worker, which means it's a 0 hour contract, but it's very flexible. You can book shifts whenever you want. And during the holidays when I didn't have uni, I was working like I would work every Saturday and Sunday, but I would be doing 30 hours, like 15-hour shift.
Wow.
I think during
Okay.
my first and second year I did that too. It was, yeah. But when I did my work placement, I brought the hours down. I was doing 15 hours altogether. And even now, like I've been doing 15 hours, and just now because university's come to an end, I've gone back to my 30 hours. But yeah, because I had a 0 hour contract, so I could just pick and choose what I wanted to do, what days I wanted to work. So it was very flexible.
Okay, could I two things? Could you like just tell us a little bit what you did? Like what or what are you still doing? What's that kind of like from a day to day, like when you go there on a Saturday, what do you do? Yeah, with whom do you work? What are your tasks?
Yeah, first thing would be kind of helping some of the people, like the clients with personal care. A lot of them are quite independent, so they don't really need help with it, but like giving medication, stuff like that. And then it would be kind of some of them would have shopping days or would be having like activities like going to the cinema, or they would go to um like activity centers. So it would be going alongside them, going with them. Sometimes I would be like key working, so kind of doing kind of paperwork around they have aims and things they want to achieve, and you would have to kind of put that down in a report. And then it would kind of just be a lot of emotional support, like playing games with them or going out for walks with them, going to the park, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it was mostly emotional support where I work, but I know that like when I first started, a lot of the clients who used to live there needed a lot of help with personal care as well. So
Okay.
yeah.
And then you said in terms like bank worker or something, like what does that mean? I'm not familiar with that term.
Yeah, so a bank worker is someone who's got a 0 hour contract.
Okay.
Part-time would be like someone with like a 15-hour contract, and you know what full-time
Okay.
is. So
Okay, fantastic. And then you basically can just say, hey, next weekend I want to work, like, and you put yourself down, and that sounds extremely flexible.
yeah, and the good thing about Certitude is you're not like restricted to one residential house. You can like pick different boroughs, different, they have like a lot of houses across London, so you can pick where you want to work as well.
Okay, that sounds great. All right. So and fantastic. Then you do your placement. You during your placement, this is basically how you would kind of like earn extra money. And then you kept on doing it through year three, and you probably would be doing it till you get to your next kind of graduate level job, right? Is that the plan?
Yeah, that's the plan.
Okay, that's fantastic. Okay. Yeah. All right, Katie, you're next up. I think you just mine just before. Yes, could you like tell us a little bit about what kind of experience did you have when you started like applying, maybe also like why you applied, and then start with that maybe.
Yeah, so sort of in my first year, I had a sort of a range of different volunteering opportunities. So I had volunteered for, I think it was about 6 months, once a week in a SEND school, so for a secondary school of boys with kind of like high sort of support needs with autism and things like that, which I really loved. That kind of cemented my interest in kind of like neuro disability and divergence and working with children as well. I think I also did Shout and some other things that I've forgotten now. And then COVID hit in the end of my first year. So it was about May, and I was just looking for volunteering opportunities, and because I was like, I have all this time and nothing to do. And I stumbled across this charity, so Pursuing Independent Paths, which works with adults with learning disabilities. And I started volunteering with them for 2 hours a week on some of their sessions remotely. So I did that for basically a full year throughout my whole second year. And it got to the summer of my second year, and one of the management staff said, hey, we have a support worker role going, which is paid part-time. We think we'd really like for you to go for it. We know you really well. You know the students. You'd be the perfect fit. So I went for the role, and then I got it. So I got it kind of like through volunteering, which was really strange. I wasn't necessarily actively looking for it, because I don't think I would have felt ready to look for a support worker role. And it was quite funny, because that was also when I got the job was when we were transitioning from remote sessions, because it was basically remote for the whole year, to in person in the centre, which was also a very big shift, is having to sort of do all these like the support needs of students online versus in person was also very different. And then I've been a support worker for them for 2 years now, paid. I'm also a bank staff, so I'm on a 0-hour contract. So I normally work 1 day a week during term time, and then otherwise I work anywhere from 3 to 5 days a week out of term time. It's a centre normally, so it's only open Monday to Friday, so that's why I'm kind of limited to working within the week. So I do have my retail job kind of on a Saturday or Sunday. So when I was on placement, I did a 4-day placement. I worked at the centre on a Friday, and then I did my retail job on a Saturday. So that's kind of how I structured it when I was on placement. And then now in third year, I just kind of kept that as my 1 day, normally on a Wednesday or a Friday, depending on my timetable. But they were super flexible. If I had like a meeting come up and I'd have to change, they were always really accommodating to that. I've loved my time there.
Yeah, I think when like Pursuing Independent Paths, right? When I think what's the name of the person that runs it? I think he's such a lovely guy.
Adam?
I think so. It's like just like some like whenever he talks about it, I think, oh wow, that sounds like a lovely place. So could you tell us a little bit about what you do on a day-to-day basis? Like if you go there, like what do you actually do? Yeah.
Yes, I think it's similar to what Sonia was saying. So it's kind of more like personal care needs with the students. So they're all adults, but we kind of refer to them as students. It's we don't do anything in homes unless it's kind of like higher support need. Like if you're like a senior key worker, then you might do home visits. But it's normally either at the centre or within the wider community. So we run kind of sessions around a range of topics. So we'll have kind of more leisurely programs or kind of more educational employment focused sessions. So I'll help either like co-facilitate these sessions or facilitate them on my own, which is always quite fun. Sometimes I'll have one-on-oneing if any students are particularly struggling, kind of dealing with like personal care, emotional kind of needs, things like that. Also like key working responsibilities. So there's like paperwork, just kind of, I think very similar to kind of what Sonia said. And then, kind of going out, doing activities, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, kind of general support worker stuff.
Okay, fantastic. Yes. Mahveen, could you tell us a little bit about your journey towards support worker? Okay, yes, and then I have like a specific question that I like okay, good. Yes, maybe let's just tell us a little bit about yours. That would be great. Yeah, how you found it, like what do you have?
So in first year and second year, I just had a retail job. which I hated. And then I started my placement. And then when I started my placement, mine was at Mildred Creek unit, which is it's in Great Ormond Street. It's a CAMS tier 4, so it's basically a mental health ward. When I was there, I used to complain about my retail job so much that everyone would say, "Why don't you look for like another job?" And my supervisor was the one who told me that, like, because I have that experience, and I did have some other like volunteering experience as well in like mental health sort of routes. She told me to like have a look at support working roles. They did offer me a one of the nurses there. It was therapeutic care worker, which is basically just a fancy support worker. She was going on maternity, so they did offer me that role, but it was a full-time role, and I wouldn't have been able to do a full-time role. When I was looking for roles, that was my main problem that I came across, that everyone was full-time. Even so, like, I would do interviews, and then in the end I'd be like, "Oh, can I just confirm if this is full-time or part-time?" They would say full-time, and I would say, "Oh, you offer, like, would you be willing to do like 2 part-time roles?" And they would just say no. A lot of like organization, if you're looking to get like a contract role, I found that like no one will really give you part-time. It's pretty much full-time. And then if you do want part-time work, you're better off just getting like a 0-hour contract. Or for me, I'm self-employed. So what that means is I pick when I want to work, I pick how many cases I have. But with that, there is the downfall of if there's no work, there's no money, you don't work. So there have been weeks where like I just haven't got paid because there was no work to do, if that makes sense. But then it's also good because like as a student, there's times when like you won't want to work because you'll be busy with like uni and dissertations and stuff. I'm quite fortunate I live at home, so that wasn't really a massive worry for me. But if that is like a big thing for you, then it's something worth thinking about. I'm not a mental health support worker, I'm a family support worker. So there's sort of 2 sides to it. One side is you have, and this is what majority of people in my company do, you have they do like supervised contacts or welfare checks. So that's basically when a court order is in place for a family, and they need, let me just give you an example. The example that comes up a lot is like an allegation has been made that mum or dad hit their kid, and then they went and told school that like mum and dad are hitting me. So what would happen is in the evenings they would have supervised contact, so you would literally go and you would sit in their house for like a couple of hours just to make sure everything's okay and just to make sure the kids are okay. As you can imagine, people don't like it. People hate the fact that you're in their homes, and they hate the fact that there's someone who's watching them and making notes. Another one is like welfare checks. So like, thinking of another example, like when I had a case where dad was really abusive towards the children, and mum wouldn't sort of let go of him. So we had to do welfare checks, and we had to basically just go to the house and make sure dad wasn't there. So you literally go in for 15 minutes and then you leave, just to make sure that the kids are okay. That's the typical type of work. Then they also have like another side of it, which is more sort of like your 24-hour shifts. So if someone's got like really complex needs like ASD, then you would like support them with that. I don't usually do those kind of cases. It's not what I'm interested in. The work that I do, unfortunately, there's not a lot of in my company. It's called CAF, which is basically early help intervention. So it's sort of what comes before you go to CAMS. And it's mental health support. So it's working with like school refusers, so people who like teenagers who don't want to go to school for whatever reasons. It's normally because of there's always a reason for it. Like for example, I worked with a girl whose parents just got divorced, and she was really struggling with her mental health, which then stopped her from going to school. I also work with a lot of people with like behavioural needs, so people who are sort of just like lashing out at their parents. Those are always normally like younger children. I hope I'm explaining this well, because I feel like I'm not doing a good job.
Did you say the name of your company?
Yeah, it's called Potton Care Services. Very weird name. The way I found it is also just to answer any question.
Care Service.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they are actually like they have this scheme because they want to, they're just a little business, they want to expand, so they are looking for workers. So if anyone's interested in sort of the non-mental health stuff but is interested in like supervised contacts or working directly with working directly with like a young person and sort of supporting them with like their day-to-day, say if they have ASD or anything like that, let me know, because I can pass on the details to you. I can put my email in the chat as well afterwards, so that if anyone wants it, they can get in touch.
Right.
But just to answer Emily's question, like how I found it, I would literally sit on Indeed and just keep applying for anything that came up. And luckily on Indeed, you could save your CV and save your cover letter on there. So I would just sit there and at night, like while everyone was watching TV, and I'd just be like clicking away. That's how I found it. It's not a very interesting answer, but that's basically what I did.
Could I, like, all the three of you, and maybe Mahveen, you go first, is like, is there something when I apply where you now seasoned pros feel like it's really good too that you can showcase like this one thing, okay? And then maybe you could also tell us, like, as a flip, what's the worst thing about working as a support worker? I mean, for me, when you said you go into the family and sit there and observe them, that sounds pretty terrible. It's like, what's
so
kind of like, what's,
for me,
yes.
There's a few things that I don't like. There's actually, it's because it's not a glamorous role by any means. It's something that if you really need to know like why you want to do it. And often the times for why you want to do it is because you want to get this experience so that you can go on to do something else. But I was quite surprised when I joined this role, like how everyone had been there for like years and years, and it was just something that people love to do. I couldn't understand that because I don't love it. I enjoy it, but I don't love it. I love like working with like young people, and I like getting a connection with them and working in the right way. But you know, parents are annoying. That's the one thing I like fail, especially because we, like, as students, we're so young, and they look at us and they see us as like unexperienced, they see us as young, they see us that we don't have children, so we don't understand. That can normally be quite difficult. When I've worked with I've often worked with parents where like I've had to sit there and explain that I used to work in Great Ormond Street, and then they sort of like, oh, okay, she knows what she's doing. And then there's the other side that I don't like, is like it does get really stressful when it comes to uni work, because with me, with the type of cases that I picked up, because a lot of people don't do them, you end up having to do a lot of unpaid work. And you end up having to like call up schools, which you don't get paid for those phone calls. You end up wanting to be like so supportive that you're like, oh, call me if there's any problems, and then you're sitting with the parent on the call for like an hour and you just didn't get paid for that hour. That's something probably that I need to work on, but it does get really stressful, especially when you have loads of work to do and everyone's just getting in your ear trying to get you to do things at work. Just another thing as well, sorry Andreas, I'll stop talking in a bit. I wouldn't have been able to get this role if I didn't have adequate experience. If you don't have any experience like at all, then you would have to start with volunteering. There's like no way that you're just going to get a paid role straight away, because even like I don't consider myself to have loads and loads of experience, but I had quite a bit of it, and it took me forever to find a role. I remember I was looking for a couple of months, but I was literally on it like every day trying to get something.
Yeah, that sounds intense.
Yeah, it was intense. I don't even think I answered your question, Andrea.
That's fantastic.
Oh, no,
you answered many questions.
Okay, sorry. I'll stop speaking now.
Also, my question. That's great. Yes, Sonia, what's for you the worst about the job?
I just think it's quite mentally stressful. I would like be working with like 4 clients at once, and they'd all just be like speaking all at once, and someone would randomly start showing challenging behaviors and throwing things, and it's just a lot. Like, you have to have a lot of patience. Like, literally when I get home from work, I have 0 patience for anyone. I just like lock myself in a room. But yeah, you just have to be really patient and just keep smiling and take breaks when things get like really intense. But yeah.
Yeah, I think I mean, I think it's funny, Mahveen said, there's like, oh, some people really love it. I have a student who was like, I wasn't even my personal tutor 2 years ago. He graduated and he's now a support worker and he absolutely loves it. I think, and it's like the way it's described, and he has, I don't know, it's like, it sounds to me like he's in the trenches of the NHS, like, so I don't know, Katie, if that's your experience. There's like, oh my God, this sounds intense, but he was really thriving on that intensity and he quite liked it. Yes. Yeah, Katie, like, what's the worst for you?
I was gonna say, yeah, I think some people really thrive off of that like intensity and like being in that moment, and there's some people kind of want to hide, and it is quite a lot. It just depends on kind of what person you are. I think one thing to be aware of is like one thing I really struggle with is like that unpredictability. Is that like you never know what's going to happen, especially with like the challenging behaviors. You know, if you're out in the community, I can have students that will see a car and will want to go and run in the road, or I'll have challenging students who for a minute will throw a drink at you or spit and things like that. And it's about how you compose yourself and you manage that and you deal with that. And I think going back to like we said, like if you're in an interview or something, and like what skill do you show? It's showing that you can deal with that. How do you show that you're patient and how you deal with managing behaviors? I know in my interview, one of the interviews questions was like, you're doing a cooking session and the student has a knife and then it goes into a meltdown. What do you do? It's kind of showing that you can deal with those challenging behaviors that can often quite be kind of distressing and dangerous. And that will.
So what do you do if a student has a knife?
I think my reaction would be like you kind of like try and de-escalate. You try and obviously get the knife away, so you might have to use like a contact technique to do that for other people's safety and for their safety. But then you try and de-escalate. You try and work out what the issue is, and you kind of emotional regulation techniques, things like that. But it's always about knowing the right answer. It's about kind of showing that awareness, because they can teach you exactly what to do. But if you're aware of that, or showing that, like if you're in the community, you know, to be aware that students might run in the road, or if you're doing a cooking session, they might grab the knife or they might throw something. It's that awareness that I think they quite look for.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, that can be quite hard.
Yeah. It's like the knife question triggered you. It's like, I know how to deal with knives.
Yeah, that really threw me off in an interview, because I was like, and then I can remember coming out the interview and like, well, what do you do if someone's like wielding a knife and obviously your student's in like a meltdown? I was like, it's quite challenging, but then that is a realistic situation.
I think as a side note, I think it's like a lot of interviews for assistant psychologists, etc. that when people tell me what they did, I was like, that's crazy. If not, people would, here's a telephone, somebody's about to kill you. What do you say? And then and it's like, oh, I don't know. I prepared. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? But okay, Mahveen, sorry. Yeah, you want.
I was just going to say, because even though there are where I work, there are the people with complex needs, I don't work with any of them. Personally, I think I'm just too short and too small to deal with a 6-foot man with autism running into the road. That's not where my interest. My interest is more mental health and helping people through their struggles and their battling with their mental health, really. So I don't deal with any of that. I literally just deal with, the way I always say it to people is that I deal with moody teenagers who are going through a hard time. So it's a lot of, I don't get people running into the road and playing with knives. I get people slamming doors at my faces and throwing their phone across the room. So it's very, very different. But there is it for me, it's a lot more calmer. I go into a home and the first thing parents love to ask, you want a cup of tea? It's the best thing ever. And then you just sit down and you just have a chat, really. That's sort of the mental health side of support working. If you didn't want to do the sort of that side that Katie's talking about, it's really you're just sitting and you're just having a chat. I do have the answer to the question in the chat. Do you want me to answer it?
Give me one sec. I think and then I pass the mic back to you. Emily also has I think I think it's really important to highlight that the range of things you can do as a support worker.
You basically aren't just a support worker. You can turn into, I've literally been a couple counselor, I've been a family therapist, I've been an individual, I've been a liaison for CAMS, I've been a school safeguarding. So it's very, very broad.
And
It
even
just
like the
depends
three
on-
of you seem to be doing very different things,
Yeah.
right? So I think, yeah, I think there's like, it's not like one. Okay, so how did you go over it? I think you like the awkward phase. Maybe Sonia, how was that for you? You started, you feel like I'm year one student. I did a little shout, which is great. I think Resources for Autism is also great. They give you training. Both of these places, I think, give you training. But then you're in as a support worker and you're on your own with a service user, a client. Like, how was like, when was it like, okay, I feel confident? Like, how was the first month or two?
Yeah, the first 2 weeks I was shadowing other staff members. So that's where I learned. And then where I work as well, there's always 3 people on shift, so me and 2 other people alongside. I think it always takes like a few months to settle down, especially like if you've never done it before. You just kind of have to be patient and just watch and learn and just try. There's going to be times when you do things completely wrong, and it's okay. Like, it happens with whatever job you work at. Yeah, for me, it's just practice. Just keep going, even if it feels hard and like you feel like where have I come? Why am I doing this? Just keep doing it, and then it will just, you'll get used to it.
Yeah.
Just willingness to learn.
Yes. Okay. Emily, you had a question, I think. Do you want to?
Yeah, I had a few questions actually, but I have one. Just Mahveen, sorry if I pronounce your name wrong.
We all pronounced your name wrong. We know. Sorry.
What's your job? Like, what's the name? I didn't hear. If you can write it down, because I wasn't sure how to write it.
You won't, if you're asking for like applying, you won't really find it. It's because
Okay.
it's like a little agency. I put my email in the chat, so just get in touch with me and then I can forward it on
Okay.
the information, because you wouldn't be able to like Google it. It's not like a
Oh.
like NHS or like
Okay.
size or anything like that.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
fantastic. Now you're like, okay, another role you're taking on. And what are your other questions, Emily?
Yeah, I was wondering as well. So what would you suggest? So during my 3rd year, if I want to work, what would you suggest, like the amount of hours or days per week that is like reasonable to work and study alongside as well?
In the beginning, I did 1 day a week. That means I only had 4 cases, I think, maximum. For me, it's quite different because I have to go to people's houses. So like, I'd live on the bus sometimes. You're literally just going back and forth. So I used to do 1 day. In 3rd year, 1 day is even quite stressful, I'll be honest with you. Because it does get quite intense, especially at the beginning when you're really like figuring out what you want to do with your dissertation. Now that uni's finished, I'm doing 2 days, which is, it's a bit like more relaxed because I don't have lectures and stuff. But I personally I had 3 days of uni, and I only did 1 day, and I think that was like more than enough.
Okay.
Yeah, and as much as it's like really like you want to do loads of things, like uni is really, really like your priority.
Yeah.
And I would say that to a lot of parents that I work with. I'd be like, it's like my uni is like the first thing. I'm not going to change my days or anything like that. But then I always used to say to people like, oh, I'm willing to figure it out afterwards if need be. Yeah.
I think like Sonia, you
sorry,
said you had
can I-
2 days, right? On a weekend, which your schedule sounded intense.
Yeah, I think the thing about where I was working is at times it could be like really quiet periods where I'd be sitting down for like 3 hours, 4 hours doing nothing, and that's when I would do my uni work. And I just think it depends on your personal circumstance, where you're working, how intense it is, because if there's going to be times when you're not really doing much, which can happen in support working, then it feels like you could do uni work there, and it just kind of depends on your personal circumstance and how you're able to kind of go through 3rd year. Personally, I didn't find 3rd year too bad. I found 2nd year a lot worse. So I felt like I could work more during the 3rd year. But then again, it's your personal experience, to be fair.
I always say it's 2nd year is the hardest. 3rd year, most students think it's the best. Yes, I don't know, Katie, how much you did 1 day, right? Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, I did 1 day at the centre, and then I did 1 day at my retail job on a Saturday. So I was normally working 2 days, which felt okay. But sometimes I felt like I would have to cut it back a bit if during like exam season. So yeah, I think it's see what your timetable's like, see what your workload's like. Maybe you can up it to 2 days. Maybe you might have to take it back down to 1. Just yeah, give it a go.
Okay, so that sounds, I think it's like, this is just like you different strokes for the what is the different strokes for different folks, whatever, like different people react differently to things, right? Some people need a weekend, some don't, right? And I think like, yeah, Mahveen, you want to jump in? And
yeah, I was just gonna say that yeah, Andreas, you're right, like some people really do need that day of like just doing nothing. I felt like I haven't had a day of doing nothing in quite a while. I like to keep, for me personally, I like to keep my evenings, like after a certain point, I won't do anything in the evening, and that will be enough for me. But that's not the same for anyone else. Just something as well, because I feel like I don't know when this came up, but I wrote it down and I forgot to say it. In terms of like when you want to work, when you start working and it's like really difficult, some people would have supervision. So you can talk to your supervisor, you can talk through all your worries, anything you find difficult. The agency I work for, it's not the best. We don't have supervision. We're lone workers as well, so I've never met my managers. They all work in like Basildon or something, like that's where the main office is. I've only had contact via email or over the phone. I've never met anyone. I've never met any of my colleagues. I just basically go out and do it myself. And someone asked the question of like settling in and like finding it awkward. You just got to pretend you know what you're doing and then you just figure it out. That's what I learned, at least. And I
okay,
remember
fake it till you make it.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly that.
Yes, so I think there's a little bit like a question touching, I think, traveling far from home. That could be if you're working cases. Is that like sometimes you travel? Yes.
So I live in Newham, which is in East London, and the neighbouring borough is Redbridge, and all my work comes from Redbridge because Redbridge Council have like a contract with my company, so they have to give their like early help cases to the company, and then because no one wants to do them, they just throw them all at me, which is fine. But I normally do it once I get into the area. Everything is an hour apart from each other. That's how I've calculated it in my head. It always takes an hour to get somewhere. If I have the car, I share a car with my parents. If I have it, then I'm quite lucky because then it doesn't take that long. But it's really up to you. Like sometimes I get referrals from places in Kent. If I want to travel to Kent, I can. They do pay for your mileage as well, but that's because we're like caseworkers and we go to places, so they will pay you for that kind of stuff as well. I don't think we spoke about pay either. So
yes, maybe yeah. Let's talk money. I think.
Yeah.
I mean and then we can. There's a question about the CV. I think it would be good maybe to transition at the end a little bit into that. Yes, I mean the reason why I often I encourage students to go and work as support workers is because it's a real experience that you're really in a transition. Like, okay, just as Mahveen described, right? You're there, you're in a home, there, like somebody collapses, somebody gets difficult behavior, right? You have Sonia said like 4 clients, they're all doing something different and you have to manage that. And people who will then offer you graduate level jobs know that, right? So it's really, really good experience. Plus you get paid. I also think that the value of experience is always, so if I know that you get paid for something, I know you have a different level of professionalism than if you're like just volunteering. I don't want to belittle it, but it's just like it sends a stronger signal. So for me, it's like, even if the pay would be terrible, I think it's good. What is the pay? Like, how much do you, like if you work a day, like 8 hours, how much money do you make?
So for me, sorry, I'll just start. Don't mean to interrupt, guys. For me, I did find that like on your CV, paid work, it just looks better. I don't know why. Even if you're getting paid absolutely like minimum wage, for some reason, like because kind of like if you're an employer and you look at like volunteering, anyone can volunteer. You don't need a lot to volunteer somewhere, but you do need a lot to be paid because it means this company is trusting you and they're paying you. I get paid, so for a case, I get paid, it used to be £10 an hour. So they would give me, so if I have a case, sorry, I'll be explaining that. If I have a case, they'll give me like 6 hours on the case. So that means 1 hour every week, for example. So I'll get paid 1 hour, 1 hour for one session, that'd be £10. It went up to, after I worked there for a couple of months, they put it up to £12. I don't know if we're going to do that, so that was nice. Then I also get paid mileage as well. So if normally it's like 26 miles, and then it's like 45p per mile. So it comes up to like £11, something like that. So now I also get paid that as well. And then at the end, I write a report, and then I charge £10 for the report. So you can kind of figure that out. It's not like amazing money, but it's not bad money either. It's kind of, I've always said, like, when I used to work in retail, you get a lot more money in retail because you have a contract, and it's like you can do overtime and etc. I could save money a lot with retail. Ever since I started support working, it's been quite difficult to save money. You just end up spending it. Or maybe
right,
that's
Katie. Yeah, Katie, how much do you, and then Sonia, like for your day, so roughly whatever you want to, like how much you want to reveal, which is like, yes.
Mine's a lot easier. So I get £11.91 an hour for support work, which is more than my retail job. I get like £10.50. So
Okay.
yeah. So it's like a good amount.
Okay, fantastic. Sonia, are you willing to share your income?
Yeah, I get about £11.25 or something like that. £11 something.
Yes. Okay. I have to say, maybe this is like, it's good. I'm slightly shocked how low this is, but it's like basically I'm just so far on the other hand. Like, oh God, yes, I think, okay, I wouldn't do a thing for 10 hours and £10 an hour.
And I think if it's because I remember if it's an NHS support worker, I think it's at a band 3 as well. Like just to be aware of. So I think that's like 19. Like if it's full time, I think it's like 18, 19.
Yes, I think if you're, yes. That's the
probably like entry. Yeah, it's just to be aware of as well.
Could I just, I think there's a question about CV. I'm just wondering a little bit like, so it's basically, if you have no experience, try to get some experience, go to our Moodle page. There are tons of really good places which offer training and kind of like real experience, Shout, resources for autism. I think PIP, we often have other places that offer kind of the experience, obviously placements, all of you did placements. And then I think with the CV, it's a little bit like, if you don't have any experience, I mean, you can't really fake it. I think one of the things that maybe we can talk to is a little bit about trying to see if you have done other things that, like, let's say you work at Argos. And it's like, okay, sometimes the atmosphere in Argos is a little tense because you have to wait, etc. And so can you kind of highlight these interactions of emotional management that you do in your other jobs and kind of highlight the connection? I think one of the things at some point you probably have to do is to get some type of volunteering experience as a first step. It sounds like because all of you had, I mean, all of you had any other advice for a person who starts trying to get into a mental health or support worker role, family support worker role?
So for me, for my experience, so I didn't have any experience at all before starting at Likewise as a placement student. And I still got a job now after just having like 10-month experience. So I think it kind of depends how you put your CV. So I put a lot of like skills, and then during my interviews, I was talking a lot about Likewise. And I think that helped. And then I had babysitting on the side. So I talked about that and tried to like make it seem like that was interesting because I was patient with them and like, yeah, try to find the skills that a support worker role would need. And yeah, just using all the things you've done before.
Yeah, I think it's always like, go to the career service, chat with them. They're good at that. You pay for that service. The career service is a service you're paying for. So make sure that you get that money worth. Okay, Katie, Mahveen, and Sonia, do you have any, or Emily, do you want to anything else that you want to share? Anything we didn't touch upon? Any questions unanswered?
I had one more question, but it's quite specific, and I don't really know if anyone has any experience of this. But when I was searching for new jobs, I got in touch with agencies instead of like the organization itself. And the agencies, most of the time, they ask for me to pay for the DBS check or for trainings, which I don't really know. What are your thoughts around that? What's your experience?
That's a great
Because I thought it
question.
was very weird to pay beforehand something that I wasn't even sure I'm going to get the job thanks to the agency. So yeah, I was.
So I'm an agency worker, and it's not all
Sorry.
that, to be honest. Basically, you do have to pay for your DBS. So much so that like I got I've been working there for 2 years. I only did the DBS twice. I just signed myself up on the like annual thing, so we just take £13 out every year. It is one of those things that like I just had to do it. But then being an agency worker as well, it gets quite complicated, because even though it's great because it's at the 0-hour contract and everything, at the end of the tax year you've got to do your tax yourself. So I had to go to an accountant. I had to pay the accountant to do my tax for me. Even though I barely worked anything, I didn't have tax to pay, but I still had to do that. So it's a lot more like, you don't really get that hand holding that you would get if you work in like a company and if you have like a contract. Having said that though, like I had really, really lovely managers who would, they're really nice. So they kind of like dumb it down for us a little bit. And explain things that don't make sense. I thought it was bang out of order that I had to pay £13 in the beginning. I was like, I don't want to pay this money. But in the long run, it was just like, well, this is just something I'm going to have to do. And also, so when you're thinking about like how to like shape experience and stuff, always ask like, so if you're volunteering, you'll obviously have someone that you, like your supervisor or mentor, whatever it is, ask them as well for tips, because they'll know the best way to present the work that you do because they're in that role directly.
All right,
yeah.
fantastic.
Don't worry, I also thought it was bang out of order that I paid £13.
All right, that was great. Really, really informative. Thank you so much, Katie, Mahveen, and Sonia. Really, really appreciate that you're taking the time and doing this unpaid. So really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'm excited and curious to learn where you three will be in a year. I hope we keep in contact. And then all the best for the rest. And we see each other latest at graduation, I think. And then Emily, good luck with year 3.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Mahveen, Katie, and Sonia. Thank you a lot.
Take care. Bye.
Bye, take care.